All right, it is 5 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item, roll call, Jason.
Sarah Sarda.
Here.
Terry Crandall.
Here.
Kathy Greenaway.
Here.
Franny Kiefer.
Here.
Jill Sternquist.
Here. Quorum has been determined. Next item is approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, Jason.
Kiefer.
Yes.
Sarda.
Yes.
Crandall.
Yes.
Greenaway.
Yes.
Sternquist.
Yes. Next, we have approval of minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes of the February 15th regular school board meeting and the special school board meeting of February 28th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, Jason.
Greenaway.
Yes.
Crandall.
Yes.
Kiefer.
Yes.
Sarda.
Yes.
Sternquist.
Yes. Next is conflict of interest. Does anybody have any direct or indirect conflicts they'd like to disclose? Moving on, we have the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, Jason.
Crandall.
Yes.
Kiefer.
Yes.
Greenaway.
Yes.
Sarda. Sternquist.
Yes. Next, we have public comment. Jason, do we have anybody sign up for public comment?
No, we did not.
Okay. Next, moving on, we have good news in student achievement. Mr. Moores.
Good evening, everyone. So I have some good news I want to report on the activities side of the world for Yankton High School here over the past couple months. I'll start off with some fine arts good news. Our Yankton High School a cappella choir was selected to perform at the annual South Dakota ACDA Music Educators Conference in Sioux Falls back in January. And Mrs. Larson said that they did a great job and they received outstanding feedback from other choir directors across the state. So congratulations to them. Our one-act play group went to Rapid City at the beginning of February to participate in their state event, and they received a superior for their play and a superior for their ensemble. And then these specific individuals also received superiors: Madison Reisner, Cora Johnson, Alicia Swenson, Olivia Hunhoff, Allie Taggart, and Ryan Stappish. So congratulations to Mr. Gaden and to Sarah Brandt, who did a great job with our one-act play. And then you see some band equipment set up behind you. There is a band concert later this evening. So the Yankton High School band members traveled to Lenox earlier this month on March 2nd. They performed in the Region 1 solo and small group contest, and they said all students who performed that day received superior or excellent ratings, so congratulations to them. And then the last piece of fine arts, last but certainly not least, the All-State Band will take place on March 24th through 26th in Brookings, and we had two students selected for that, junior Damian Magnuson and senior Kalia Thon, so congratulations to those kids. On the athletic side of things, state gymnastics was held in Mitchell on February 11th and 12th. Our girls finished 5th place as a team. Senior Allison Johnson was 9th place on the vault, 7th place in the all-around, and she was named to the all-tournament team, so congratulations to our Gazelles gymnastics team and to Allison. The state wrestling tournament was a couple weeks ago in Sioux Falls. We had two girl Gazelle wrestlers place. Junior Nevaeh Leonard was runner-up at 126 pounds, and freshman Jet Yagi finished in 5th place at 106 pounds. Both Nevaeh and Jet were also named to the girls ESD all-conference team. And while we're talking all-conference, just today on the girls basketball side, senior Ellie Karlovitz was named to the girls ESD all-conference team. And on the guys side, junior Rugby Riken was named to the boys ESD all-conference team, and senior Jaden Kroll was named honorable mention. And last but not least, on the athletic side of things, the boys basketball team will play Sioux Falls Roosevelt on Thursday at noon in the Denny Sanford Premier Center in the first round of the state basketball tournament. And Sioux Falls Roosevelt is 21-0, and as you may realize, they won the state tournament last year. But something that you may not know, the last time Sioux Falls Roosevelt lost a basketball game, guess who that was to? The Yankton Bucks last year at our gym in January. So it's time for them to lose again, and why not to us? Any questions or comments about the good news I have for you guys? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Next, we have Curriculum and Technology, Mrs. Valnez and Mrs. Davison.
Hello, tonight I am going to share about math intervention, and this is an opportunity that we've been able to explore starting at our elementaries and middle school as part of our needs assessment that we went through for our American Rescue Plan and those ESSER 3 funds. So to start out, just what is math intervention? The main goal of intervention classes is to help students become successful in the area of math, and then we are doing that by helping them build those essential content skills as well as increase their motivation and confidence in math. So this year, as we've gotten to explore math intervention, we have an interventionist in each of our elementaries as well as our middle school. Their main roles this year are to work with students in small group as well as support the classroom teachers. Oh, go back one, sorry. All right, and these are interventionists for this year. And so a lot of great feedback from students, parents, and of course our classroom teachers on having the additional support. Our goal this year with math intervention has been to really work on those foundational skills. A lot of those skills may be missing because of the upsets of COVID, just missing some school, or when we had our shutdown year quarter as well. Really focusing on numbers and operations. Next year, we are going to continue to expand our math intervention, and we have interventionists that are currently some of our classroom teachers, and they are going to take on a 2-year position by being a math interventionist in our elementaries and then in our middle school as well. Their primary roles will be to deliver that small group instruction and to help collaborate and support the classroom, as well as we'll start our math curriculum review next year, so they'll participate in that, and then participate in our TAT, our teacher-student meetings at the elementary too. And so here are our math interventionists for next year. I'll just give you a minute. I won't read each slide to you. And these teachers, Mrs. Savvy will be working with students at Webster and Beadle. And Mrs. Jaradchek will be working with students at Stewart and Lincoln. Mrs. May will be working with students at Beadle and Webster. And Mrs. Evans will be working with students at Stewart and Lincoln. Mrs. Howell will be working with students at the middle school. These teachers will come out for this 2-year position. Like I said, we are grateful to have this opportunity not only to support our students, but also our classroom teachers to kind of fill some of those gaps and those needs that we've come across because of COVID. Just a lot of attendance, having trouble to keep up and make sure those gaps are closed. Some things that we've been exploring this year for math intervention is a curriculum called Bridges Math Intervention. And this will be used at our elementaries as well as our middle school, primarily at the middle school for students maybe in 6th grade if they're needing some support in elementary concepts that they need the additional support in. We're still exploring materials for YMS as well for that intervention. Really, when we look at an intervention resource, we want it to not be grade specific. We want it to hit big ideas and key concepts so that we can help students and teachers close those gaps. As you noticed before, I said that that the teachers were at double schools. So for example, Mrs. May and Mrs. Savvy are working at Beadle and Webster. So something that we're going to do, because this curriculum is more vertically aligned and isn't grade specific, we are going to have Mrs. May working with students in K2 primarily at both schools, and then Mrs. Savvy working with students in 3-5 at both schools. It really helps them as the teacher to be very specific. They can learn that content really well and then support the classroom teacher as well. The volumes that are on the screen right now are targeting those key concepts in grades K2. And then on the next screen, these are the ones in 3-5. And then as I stated, we're still exploring those additional YMS materials too. Any questions?
These faculty people were volunteers? They raised their hand about this, or were they voluntold about it?
They applied for a transfer. I'm trying to think of the correct wording. Dr. Kindle, could you help me out with that?
So yes, we open it up district-wide internally, and those that were interested could apply using our in-district transfer policy, and several were interviewed, and we had those selected that she talked about tonight. And so we think we have fabulous people in those positions, and we just recently hired, which was on the consent agenda, we then filled their positions with 2-year positions from people outside of the district. And so we had great candidates in both for these internal positions, and then the ones that we filled of these teachers that moved into these positions. So
And
really
these
happy.
positions are federally funded, right?
Yes, correct.
So it's a 2-year funding program, could be continued, who knows, right?
Right. Depending upon if there's additional federal money, we'll determine whether or not we continue to move forward, and or we can take a look at our district finances at that time and see what we could maybe do at that time. But for now, they're considered 2-year positions.
Thank you.
I would add on to that too, that it gives us the opportunity to explore math intervention. You know, what needs do our students and teachers have, and how can we sustain something to continue to support students and teachers?
Do teachers refer students, or how do they get the intervention?
Yeah, there will be a process for referring students. We look at their NWA or our MAP data or benchmark data. We look at data from within the classroom, their observational data, their formative assessment data, and then we prioritize student needs and then compile lists from there. The groups will be flexible, like they are in title. So when we fill gaps as student needs come, then we would push them back into the classroom.
What data will we be using to measure the success of this over the next 2 years, or how will we be tracking the effectiveness of the students involved?
Great question. So we look really closely when we look at our MAP data. We don't necessarily always focus our goals on proficiency. We focus our goals on growth. And so we'll track the students that participate and see how their growth goals are being their growth goals, and that will help us to measure and determine the success rate of this intervention.
Will it be different MAPS testing or the same test that's given to all students?
Same test
Okay.
given to all students, yep.
Thank you.
So could you give us an example of what a potential growth goal might be for a couple different students, maybe one elementary, maybe one middle school?
Sure. So as you saw, specifically for Bridges, it goes by key concepts. So then MAPS data can break down into those 4 strands as well. So for example, this year, I'll give you an actual example. For this year, in intervention, we're targeting specifically numbers and operations standards at each of the grade levels. So then looking at MAPS data, we started by identifying students that scored below proficiency at their grade level in that strand alone. And then we measured their success in the classroom as well as with the interventionists. In looking at our winter data, we look for that student to start closing that gap. For example, if the student scored in the fall at the 21st percentile, so if you stood 100 students in first grade up with each other, that student would score at the 21st spot in line. And then we looked for them to grow into a spot higher than that. So maybe now they're in the 40th percentile. Our goal is to be within that average or above average range, which would start at the 41st percentile in MAPS data. And then that's how we measure our success, is if they're back on track for their grade level or if they're moving on track to their grade level. NWA is an adaptive test, so it also grows as the year goes on. And so if a student scored at the 21st percentile and then they again scored at the 21st percentile in winter term, that would show that they're growing at a rate, but they're not closing that gap. So we're looking for them to move up in percentiles always. So that's how we were tracking our data this year. And we've seen great success. Mrs. Fleer at Stewart is currently piloting that Bridges curriculum, and we've had high success and growth from our students there.
How many students this year were affected by this program?
Mrs. Fleer works 3 days a week, and she has a caseload or a group of about 60 to 65 students. K-5, we hit all grade levels.
You anticipate the same numbers next year?
Yes, we should be able to, we should be able to serve about 60 students per teacher. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Are you up? I think so. Okay.
Mr. Mitzel, I'd make a couple of comments before you get started. Sorry about that. So just for the board's information and everybody else here that's listening and those that are watching live stream. So the last time that we really took a really hard look at this document was 24 years ago in 1998. I chaired the committee, and it's been a long time. And then most recently has been 6 years ago, and that is when the state adopted the Charlotte Danielson framework. And so schools were required to take a look at their evaluation process, align it to what the legislature, what the state approved, and so we did that. And here we are 6 years later and taking another look at this document, and I think there were just some outdated wording of things, and we just need to take a look at this whole document again. And COVID in the last 2 years also was tough on the evaluation process in the sense that the state last year did not require schools to get into to do evaluations and observations like we had in the past for various reasons. And so the last 2 years really made us take a look at, what we do in Yankton, which frankly, we've done a lot more than most school districts when it comes to the number of observations and the number of written evaluations. So I asked the committee to take a look at that as well as the entire document and come back with recommendations. And Mr. Mitzel and Mrs. Riken co-chaired that committee.
For anyone following on the agenda, we're actually moving on to number 9, evaluation. So Mr. Mitzel is going to speak to this one.
All right. So as Dr. Kindle explained, our current document was established in 1998, amended in 2016 when Charlotte Danielson's framework for teaching came along, and we were trained on that. When we got the committee together this year, we had a nice group from all buildings, ranging from the 30-year vets to the ones that maybe have been here for 4 or 5 years and had just come out of maybe the additional observation phase and are now tenured. So we had representation from each building, administrators from all buildings, and a lot of the recommendations were small changes in wording to make things go from maybe the 1990s to the 2020s. The way that we speak and the wording that we use is different. I think that the committee was very impressed with the original document, so there weren't a lot of changes. One of the things that we came to the conclusion that maybe we don't need to do as many observations, so our recommendation is for teachers in their first through third years, we would change from 3 observations per semester to a minimum of 2 observations per semester. And for those with 4+ years, our tenured staff, the recommendation would change from 3 observations per year to a minimum of 2 observations per year with an annual evaluation. There was some good discussion within the committee about the role of observations and evaluation and the feedback that's provided. We did not want to lose that, and we think that if we were able to change from the current amount of observations and evaluations to what we're recommending, we would not lose that. In our recommendation, these numbers just serve as a minimum. So if an administrator wanted to do additional observations, they could certainly do that. If we look at the state's recommendations, the state recommends that teachers in their first through third years receive 2 observations per year and 1 evaluation. Again, we would be doing more than that. And the state recommends for teachers that are in their 4+ contract that they get 1 observation per year and 1 evaluation every other year. So again, we would be doing quite a bit more than that. And like I said, this is a minimum, and if an administrator felt like they wanted to come in and observe a 3rd, 4th, 5th time, they could certainly do that. And if a teacher wanted that observation, they could certainly, sometimes those things happen as well. Can you come look at my math lesson? I'm having some students confused. Can you give it another set of eyes? So we will do that at times as well. So I guess I'll open it up for questions, since I think the main change is the amount of observations and evaluations. And there was a few wording changes, but for the most part, the integrity of the document remained the same. And I thought the committee worked well together, and it was nice to hear perspectives from the middle and high school along with the elementary teachers, kind of meshing those together.
Mr. Mitchell, do you feel like the additional evaluations are going to really cut into administrator time in terms of time away from their office, time away from dealing with students?
Well, we would actually be doing less observations, less required observations, so we would have more time for maybe some of those informal feedbacks, walking through classrooms for 3 or 4 minutes, watching kids in action, and not having as many of the formal sit-down observations, which again, I think it frees up time and allows for you to give maybe more of that informal feedback to staff and students as you're going into classrooms.
So fewer observations and more evaluations?
Nope, fewer observations and the same amount of evaluations. A teacher in their first through third year would still have an evaluation at the end of the first semester and at the end of the year. Instead of having 3 formal observations, they'd only have 2 each semester.
Is the Charlotte Danielson criteria still followed at the state level, and is that what's incorporated in that we follow continually?
Yeah, so it is still incorporated at the state level. We have that as part of our document. We are not totally Charlotte Danielson, where we've been trained through that, but we liked a lot of the wording in our original document as well. So when we meshed that in 2016, we combined the components of Charlotte Danielson with the existing language that we already had.
Before 2016, did the state have any directive for evaluations, or was that the first time that came forward? I don't mean to put you on the spot about
Yeah,
6
I don't
years
recall
ago.
if there was a minimum or maximum at that time. There were different initiatives that were out there about how you do teacher observation and evaluation. Charlotte Danielson really took off, not only in our state, but across the country at that time. So before then, I think there were some scattered trainings where one district was maybe doing it this way, another district was doing it this way. And this helped make things more uniform across the state.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Mitzel?
So I think my only additional comment is if this is approved, we would make this document effective immediately, where for this school year as well, it would be the 2 observations for our tenured staff and the 1 evaluation. And for our non-tenured staff, the second semester would be 2 observations and an evaluation.
This is an action item, so I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the teacher evaluation document.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, Jason?
Crandall,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Sarda,
Yes.
Greenaway,
Yes.
and Sternquist.
Yes. Next, we have curriculum. Mrs. Valnes.
All right. Now we're going to talk about ELA curriculum. And so just to review, we started our curriculum study with the Language Arts Department at all levels 3 years ago. And so this was a longer study than we typically have done. It's been really nice to have the additional time as we've undergone some challenges through COVID. So first, just to bring back, last year we presented our curriculum guides, and this was the philosophy statement. This was a really fun activity we did and built this together, K-12. So this is our philosophy statement for English Language Arts, and I'll let you read that. Some of the highlighted vocabulary out of that statement would be the diverse and the language-rich environments, explicit and systematic instruction, motivation, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. And you'll notice that as I go through the recommendations at each grade level. This just highlights the work that we've done over the past 3 years. So we start always with a needs assessment and data analysis. We look at our current curriculum, how it's working for us, evaluate our data that we have to see strengths and areas of support that we need to offer our students and teachers. We did that during the 1920 school year. Then we moved into standards alignment. So our state revises our standards on a rotating basis, just as well as what we do with our curriculum of relooking. And so we looked at our updated state standards, we looked at how they've changed, and then we again compared them back to that data analysis. We did that through the 2021 school year. Also in that school year, we took what we were learning in our needs assessment, our data analysis, and our standards work, and we were learning and growing together professionally. So we did some trainings, we read some articles, and we brought some speakers in that might have just been from within the departments as well. Then in the 21-22 school year, so currently we have been evaluating resources. So at each level that looks just a little bit different, and I'll go through that. When we evaluate resources, we always go back to those original needs that needs assessment, that data analysis, and those standards alignment to be sure that we are hitting that philosophy statement and those criteria marks that we established at the beginning. I included next year because it's really important to realize that through a curriculum study, just because we're making a recommendation tonight, our work is not done yet. Once we have an approved curriculum, then the fun and the work and the integration starts. So this next year, we'll be working on an implementation. We do training with the company. We'll do training with our district staff as well. And then always focusing on collaboration as part of that learning and growing too. So really, I guess you could say we will be in this study for 4 years. To get started with our recommendations, this is the list of elementary committee members. Our committees include administration as well as teachers at all different experiences, not only in years of experience, but also throughout the school, just their role that they play. And then parents and Mr. Crandall as a school board member. For elementary, our recommendation is to adopt and purchase Open Court from McGraw-Hill. It will be a copyright of 2023. Some of the highlights from the committee members was the text variety from within the curriculum, the student and teacher resources that supported differentiated instruction, the explicit and systematic instruction of the foundational skills, as well as direct writing instruction with models. Next is our middle school, and again, a wide variety of committee participants. Our recommendation for middle school is Study Sync from McGraw-Hill, and it has a 2021 copyright. Feedback for this one from committee members and highlights are text complexity and diversity, the explicit building of vocabulary, student resources to appropriately support and challenge all of our learners, and it also promotes critical thinking and close reading skills. And then our high school committee. And then high school, we have lots of recommendations up there. Of course, the resources would tie directly to the courses, so our elective courses as well as our required courses. And then the highlight and the feedback given for all of these that we really focused on at the high school was that text diversity and complexity, the alignment to the standards at an in-depth and rigorous level, as well as always focused on that engagement and student interest. And then this is a continuation of the recommendations for the high school. And then we have many of our committee members sitting here today, so just a thank you to all of their hard work for this was always, it's a great challenge to review curriculum, but then when we had many other challenges unforeseen that we were also dealing with on a day-to-day basis, kudos to this group. We worked really hard together. We have great recommendations, and we're proud of the choices that we've made and recommended to the board. You want to go to the next slide? There will be a sampling of resources available for review and written comment at the admin building for the next 30 days. Our building hours are 7:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Some of the resources we review digitally rather than in print copies. So on the memos on the school board docs, you can find links to those as well. But there will be most of them at the admin building to review too. Questions?
Being an old English instructor, and the word old, just kind of keep that down a little bit, but anyway, I was impressed by the complexity and the depth of the curriculum in the various areas, but particularly I was impressed by the knowledge of the individual faculty members who were involved in that committee. And I want to personally thank them for all the work that they put into this thing. I noticed that the elementary curriculum was, you voted was 12-9. Was the same split evident in the middle school and high school curriculums?
Sure. At the middle school, we reviewed curriculum resources toward the end of last year, and the committee recommended to pilot StudySync for second quarter this year, and they were all in agreement to do that. It was more of an informal conversation. Yes, we want to give this one a try. This is our top choice. And then after we did that pilot and I asked for feedback from the committee, 100% said, yes, we should continue to move forward in this direction. At the high school, it's a little different. We had collaborative conversations throughout our entire last 2 years, I would say, of evaluating resources and very informal coming to those decisions. Mrs. Michelson, as department chair, even led a lot of those small group discussions, and the decisions were very collective, informally amongst the group.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Nicole, I just have go ahead, Franny.
Is it kind of best practice, just with the high school, to not have one curriculum that we're following, then a bunch of different pieces of literature and kind of guidance at each grade level in each class? Is that kind of common? And
Yes, it's very common across the state to have a wide selection. It's really focused on, we have a core resource at each of our required courses, so English 1, 2, 3, and AP, and then we have those supplemental resources. We spent a lot of time at the high school level really diving into the standards. At high school, our standards are 2 grade levels, so it will say like 9 and 10, and here's the standard, and then 11 and 12, and here's the standard. And so we spent a lot of time unpacking those standards. We asked ourselves questions such as, how is this standard taught throughout the high school years? When is it introduced? How many times is it taught? Our kids will take different paths through elective courses in the English department, so we want to ensure that beyond just English, a required English course, that they're getting to each of those standards at high levels. And so in order to do that, we aligned our resources to that standards alignment document that we created. And then also our elective courses they come out of needs that we have as a school district and interests, and then the expertise of our English department. So you'll see even across the state, yes, we have a set requirement for English graduation requirements, but we also have unique elective classes that are specific to Yankton, so they would see a different selection in other schools.
Okay, perfect. That was going to be my next question about electives. So just a comment, I thought the philosophy statement was phenomenal to come up with that just all-encompassing of a statement for all grade levels was very impressive. So I think that really set the tone for your committee.
Nicole, in the 3 levels, elementary, middle school, and high school, there are several sites that people can access to look at the documents in the curriculum.
Correct.
The materials. Will that be posted somewhere in the event that somebody can't get out to look at it that would like to see it?
Sure. So on the board agenda, there's links to each of the memos at each level, and then within there are clickable links to take you to review those resources, or on the memo as well, if someone has a question, they can email me directly and I can help them with the resources that they'd like to look at. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda. That was just a presentation, so that was not an action item. Next item is executive session. I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we enter executive session per South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2, numbers 1 and 4.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, Jason?
Kiefer,
Yes.
Sarda,
Yes.
Crandall,
Yes.
Greenaway,
Yes.
Sternquist.
Yes. We have now moved into executive session. I declare that we are out of executive session. No action was taken during executive session. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion is second. All those in favor? Aye.
To